August 16, 1969. Woodstock Festival, Bethel, New York. Two black musicians stood on the same stage that weekend. Both revolutionaries. Both genre benders. Both changing music in ways nobody had seen before. Jimi Hendrix. Sly Stone. Psychedelic rock meets funk. Guitar god meets groove master. Blues explosion meets soul innovation. They represented two different paths to the same destination: freedom, musical liberation, the breaking down of every boundary, racial, musical, cultural. Jimi would play Monday morning at 9 a.m. The final act, performing the Star-Spangled Banner to a crowd that had dwindled from 500,000 to 80,000. Sly and the Family Stone had played early Sunday morning at 3:30 a.m., performing "I Want to Take You Higher" to an ecstatic crowd that was still 400,000 strong. They didn't share the stage that weekend, didn't jam together, but their spirits were aligned, their missions parallel. This is the story of Jimi Hendrix and Sly Stone. How funk met psychedelic. How two geniuses influenced each other. How they changed music forever, together and apart. Let's start with Sly Stone. Because without understanding Sly, you can't understand what Jimi was reaching for in 1969 to 1970. Sylvester Stewart. Born March 15, 1943, Denton, Texas. Moved to the San Francisco Bay Area as a child. By the mid-1960s, Sly was a producer, DJ, and musician, working for Autumn Records, producing Bobby Freeman, the Mojo Men, the Beau Brummels. But Sly had a vision that nobody else in music was pursuing. He wanted to create a band that mixed everything: black and white members, men and women, soul and rock, funk and psychedelia, gospel and acid, R&B and experimentation. In 1967, he formed Sly and the Family Stone. The lineup was radical for its time. Sly Stone, keyboards, vocals, bandleader. Freddie Stone, Sly's brother guitar. Rose Stone, Sly's sister keyboards. Cynthia Robinson, trumpet, woman in a rock band, revolutionary. Jerry Martini, saxophone, white guy in a funk band, also revolutionary. Larry Graham, bass, inventor of slap bass technique. Greg Errico, drums. Racially integrated, gender integrated, musically integrated. Their first album in 1967, A Whole New Thing, mixed soul, Motown, psychedelia, and pop into something nobody had heard before. Then 1968, Dance to the Music, breakthrough hit. The sound was infectious, positive, celebratory, but also experimental. Complex arrangements, tight grooves mixed with spacey elements. 1969, Stand, the album that changed everything. Everyday People hit #1. The title track became an anthem. Don't Call Me Nigger, Whitey showed Sly's political edge. By summer 1969, Sly and the Family Stone were massive. One of the few black acts dominating both black and white charts. A cultural magnet during turbulent times. Miles Davis, the jazz legend, would later say that only 3 musicians from the 1960s influenced him: James Brown, Jimi Hendrix, and Sly Stone. That's the company Sly kept. Now Jimi Hendrix. We know his story. Seattle kid. Chitlin circuit sideman. London explosion. The Jimi Hendrix experience. By 1969, Jimi was the most famous guitarist in the world. Are You Experienced, Axis, Bold as Love, Electric Ladyland. 3 albums that redefined what rock guitar could be. But here's what's interesting. In 1969, Jimi was at a crossroads. The Jimi Hendrix experience was falling apart. Noel Redding wanted to do his own thing. Mitch Mitchell was tired. The touring was relentless. The pressure enormous. And Jimi was feeling disconnected from the black community. The psychedelic rock scene was overwhelmingly white. Jimi's audience was overwhelmingly white. White kids worshiping a black guitarist who played white rock music with blues roots. Jimi wanted to connect more with black audiences. Wanted to explore funk. Wanted to get back to his R&B roots, but with the experimental edge he'd developed. He was watching what Sly Stone was doing. Watching how Sly mixed races and genres. Watching how Sly kept a funk foundation while experimenting with psychedelia. Sly was showing that you could be black, experimental, funky, and commercially successful. You didn't have to choose between artistic freedom and connecting with black audiences. Jimi took notes. May 1968. Fillmore East, New York. Sly and the Family Stone shared a bill with Jimi Hendrix. We don't have detailed accounts of them hanging out backstage, but they were in the same building, same night, same energy. Jimi would have watched Sly's set, would have seen Larry Graham's bass technique, the thumb slap that became slap bass, would have heard how Freddie Stone's guitar worked with the rhythm section, would have felt that funk groove. Sly would have watched Jimi's set, would have seen the wah-wah pedal usage, would have heard the feedback as melody, would have witnessed the guitar as an experimental instrument, not just a rhythm or lead tool. Mutual influence, mutual respect. Two black musicians operating at the highest level, watching each other work. August 1969. Woodstock. Sly and the Family Stone played Sunday morning, 3:30 a.m. 8 songs. Dance to the music. Stand. Everyday people. I want to take you higher. The performance is legendary. One of the highlights of the Woodstock movie. Sly in a white fringe jacket, leading the crowd in chants. Higher. Higher. The band was tight. The groove was locked. The energy was ecstatic. Mixed race band. Men and women. Funk and rock perfectly balanced. The crowd, mostly white hippies, dancing to black funk music. Unity. Integration. Peace. Everything Woodstock was supposed to represent. Jimi wasn't on site yet when Sly played. He was scheduled for Monday morning. But he would have heard about Sly's performance. Word traveled fast. When Jimi finally took the stage Monday at 9 a.m., the crowd had shrunk. Most people had left. Only 80,000 remained from the original 500,000. But Jimi played a 2-hour set, the longest of his career. 16 songs. The new lineup, Gypsy Sun and Rainbows. Jimi on guitar, Mitch Mitchell on drums, Billy Cox on bass, Larry Lee on rhythm guitar, Juma Sultan and Jerry Velez on percussion. Expanded lineup. More rhythm, more funk influence. Moving away from the power trio format towards something bigger, groovier. He played Voodoo Child, Fire, Hear My Train A-Comin', and then, during Jam Back at the House, Jimi went into pure experimentation. Feedback, noise, sound exploration, followed by the Star-Spangled Banner, the performance that defined Woodstock, distorted national anthem, political statement, sonic revolution. But listen closely to the rhythm section on that Woodstock set. The groove, the funk influence. That's not the experience's psychedelic chaos. That's Jimi reaching for something funkier, something Sly was already doing. By late 1969, Jimi was done with the experience. Noel Redding had left. Mitch Mitchell was exhausted. The formula had run its course. Jimi wanted to try something completely different, something that connected him back to his roots while still pushing forward. He formed the band of Gypsys. All-black trio. Jimi Hendrix, guitar, vocals, Billy Cox, bass. Jimi's old army buddy from the Chitlin Circuit days played with him backing Little Richard. Buddy Miles, drums, vocals, ex-Electric Flag, had played behind Wilson Pickett, brought serious funk credentials. This wasn't just a lineup change. This was a complete shift in musical direction. The band of Gypsys rehearsed intensely. Jimi was writing new material. Funkier, more political, more connected to what was happening in Black America. The Black Panthers, civil rights struggles, Vietnam War protests. Machine Gun became the centerpiece. A 12-minute anti-war epic. But unlike the Star-Spangled Banner, this was built on a funk groove. Buddy Miles laying down a relentless pocket. Billy Cox's bass walking through the changes. Jimi's guitar on top, screaming like bullets and bombs. The difference from the experience was night and day. With Mitch Mitchell, the rhythm section was jazz-influenced. Triplets. Swing. Loose. Jimi was the anchor, and Mitch danced around him. With Buddy Miles, the rhythm section was the anchor. Straight-ahead funk. Rock-solid pocket. Jimi could fly because the foundation was so strong. Billy Cox's bass was also different from Noel Redding's. Noel played bass like a guitar player, melodic, following Jimi's changes, filling spaces. Billy played bass like a bass player, holding down the low end, locking with the kick drum, creating a groove that you could build a house on. Listen to Power of Soul from the Band of Gypsys album. That opening riff is pure funk. Wah-wah guitar over a nasty groove. That's Sly Stone influence all over it. Who Knows has a swagger that the experience never had. It's funky. It's confident. It's Black American music, blues and R&B and funk with psychedelic guitar on top. We Gotta Live Together is the most obvious Sly homage. Extended jam. Percussion breaks. Call and response vocals. The whole Sly and the Family Stone vibe, but filtered through Jimmy's sonic experiments. New Year's Eve 1969/New Year's Day 1970. Fillmore East, New York. For shows over 2 nights. The band of Gypsys performed live. The shows were recorded for the album that would fulfill Jimmy's legal obligation to Capitol Records. These performances were different from anything Jimmy had done before. More focused on groove. Less pyrotechnics. More musical conversation between 3 players who were completely locked in. The audience was different too. More black faces than usual at a Jimi Hendrix show. The band of Gypsys was connecting with the audience Jimmy had always wanted to reach. But the experiment was short-lived. January 28, 1970. Madison Square Garden. Band of Gypsys headlining a benefit for the Vietnam Moratorium Committee. The show was a disaster. Jimmy was off. Out of it. Some say he was dosed with LSD by manager Mike Jeffrey. Some say he was just overwhelmed. Mid-set, Jimmy stopped playing. Sat down on a speaker. Told the audience, "That's what happens when Earth fucks with space." Then he walked off stage. Show over. The band of Gypsys dissolved shortly after. Buddy Miles was out. Mitch Mitchell came back. Jimmy kept Billy Cox, but returned to the power trio format for his final months. The band of Gypsys had lasted only a few months. Maybe 5 gigs total. But the influence of that period, the funk experimentation, the groove-based approach, stayed with Jimmy for his remaining time. Listen to his 1970 recordings. Easy Rider. Freedom. Stepping Stone. The funk is still there. The Sly Stone influence remains. Even with Mitch back on drums, Jimmy was playing funkier than he had with the original experience. And Sly was watching Jimmy too. Listen to Sly's work from 1969 to 1970. The guitar sounds get more distorted, more aggressive, more rock-influenced. Freddie Stone's guitar on Stand has a crunch that wasn't there on earlier albums. A bite, a distortion. That's Jimmy's influence. The experimental elements increased. Psychedelic touches, studio effects, sound exploration. Sly was taking Jimmy's psychedelic experimentation and incorporating it into funk frameworks. By 1971, Sly released There's a Riot Going On. Darker, grittier, more experimental, less celebratory than Stand. The guitar work is grimier. The grooves are heavier. The psychedelia is more pronounced. That album is considered one of the greatest of all time. A masterpiece. And it shows both Sly's funk roots and the psychedelic influence he absorbed from the late 60s scene, including from Jimmy. Miles Davis was watching both of them. And what he saw changed jazz forever. Miles had been searching for a new direction. By 1968 to 69, he was tired of traditional jazz. Wanted something electric. Something funky. Something that connected with young black audiences who were listening to Sly and Jimmy, not Miles Davis. In his autobiography, Miles was explicit about his influences during this period. He said only 3 musicians from the 1960s truly influenced his transition to electric jazz: James Brown, Jimi Hendrix, and Sly Stone. 3 black musicians. 3 revolutionaries. 3 people who understood that rhythm could be the foundation for experimentation. Miles started listening to Sly's albums obsessively. Dance to the music. Stand. The way Sly kept a rock-solid funk groove while experimenting on top. The way the rhythm section was the anchor, allowing freedom above it. He listened to Jimmy's albums too. The way Jimmy used effects as instruments. The way feedback became melody. The way the electric guitar could be a complete sonic universe. And Miles started to imagine what jazz could sound like if it absorbed these lessons. In 1969, Miles released In a Silent Way. Electric keyboards. Rock rhythms. The beginning of fusion. In 1970, Bitches Brew. Full electric. Funk grooves. Rock intensity. Jazz improvisation. The album that created fusion as a genre. But listen to Miles's work from 1970 to 1971 and you can hear exactly where the influence came from. On Live/Evil, 1971, Miles had his bassist Michael Henderson play lines directly based on Jimmy's music. The bass line to Inamorata is the bass line from Jimmy's Fire. The groove on What I Say is basically Message to Love from Band of Gypsys. Miles told his drummer Jack DeJohnette, "Play like Buddy Miles. Give me that pocket. I don't want jazz time, I want funk time." Miles literally instructed his musicians to sound like Jimmy and Sly. He wanted that combination of funk foundation and experimental freedom. The result was fusion, jazz-rock-funk hybrid, electric instruments, rhythm-driven, improvisation-heavy, and fusion went on to influence everyone. Weather Report, Mahavishnu Orchestra, Return to Forever, Herbie Hancock's Headhunters. The entire fusion movement of the 1970s traces directly back to Miles Davis absorbing the lessons of Sly Stone and Jimi Hendrix. Which means Sly and Jimi didn't just change rock and funk. They changed jazz too. Their influence rippled through every genre. And the influence kept spreading beyond jazz. George Clinton was watching. Sly showed him that funk could be psychedelic. Jimi showed him that black rock was possible. Clinton created Parliament Funkadelic. Funk with rock guitars, psychedelic concepts, theatrical performances, space-age imagery. P-Funk was the logical extension of what Sly and Jimi started. Funk meets psychedelic, taken to its cosmic extreme. Prince was watching too. Born 1958. Too young to see Jimi live, but grew up studying both Jimi and Sly. Prince took Jimi's guitar wizardry and Sly's funk foundation and created his own hybrid. Purple Rain was Jimi's psychedelia meets Sly's groove, filtered through Prince's Minneapolis sound. Lenny Kravitz built his entire career on the Jimi-Sly combination. Listen to Let Love Rule, or Are You Gonna Go My Way? That's Jimi's guitar attack over Sly's funk sensibility. Living Color, Fishbone, TV on the radio. Every black rock band that came after owes a debt to Jimi and Sly for proving it could be done. Even hip-hop was influenced. Listen to the early samples. Parliament Funkadelic getting sampled by everyone. Those grooves trace back to Sly. The guitar licks being sampled trace back to Jimi. The entire musical landscape from 1970 onward was shaped by what Sly Stone and Jimi Hendrix did in the late 1960s. The tragedy is that Jimi died before he could fully explore this direction. September 18, 1970. London. Jimi Hendrix died. Age, 27. The band of Gypsys had already dissolved by then. Buddy Miles was out. Mitch Mitchell was back. Jimi was still searching for the right sound. We'll never know where he would have gone. But the evidence suggests he was moving toward funk rock. Rhythm-heavy, groove-based, still experimental, but more earthbound than the experience's cosmic psychedelia. Maybe he would have created something like There's a Riot Going On. Maybe he would have pioneered funk rock even more explicitly. We'll never know. Sly Stone's story is tragic too. Different kind of tragedy. After There's a Riot Going On, Sly descended into drug addiction. Cocaine. PCP. His behavior became erratic. He missed concerts. Showed up late. The family Stone fell apart. By the mid-70s, Sly was a shadow of himself. The genius was still there occasionally, flashes of brilliance, but the consistency was gone. He'd surface occasionally. The 1993 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. The 2006 Grammy Awards tribute where he joined the band for I Want to Take You Higher, and then left mid-song. Tragic. A genius consumed by drugs and instability. But the music remains. The influence is undeniable. Here's what Jimi and Sly did together. Even though they were mostly doing it separately, they showed that black musicians didn't have to choose between experimental freedom and connecting with black audiences. You could be funky and psychedelic. You could groove and explore. Before Sly and Jimi, the assumption was that experimental music was white hippie music and funk/soul was black music. They proved that was bullshit. Black musicians could be just as experimental as white rockers. And experimental music could have a groove. They showed that racial integration in music wasn't just possible, it was powerful. Sly literally did it with his band. Black and white musicians, men and women, all equal, all essential. The music was better because of the diversity. Jimi did it differently. He was a black guitarist playing to mostly white audiences, but he never abandoned his roots. He brought blues and R&B into psychedelic rock. And with the band of Gypsys, he explicitly reconnected with black musical traditions. They both used the studio as an instrument, not just a place to record, but a place to experiment, to create sounds that couldn't be replicated live, to push the boundaries of what recorded music could be. Sly's production on There's a Riot Going On was revolutionary. He played almost everything himself, overdubbed endlessly, created a dark, druggy, experimental masterpiece. Jimi's work at Electric Lady Studios was the same, layering guitars, creating soundscapes, using effects as composition tools. Both of them were uncompromising. They didn't let commercial pressures dictate their art. They followed their vision wherever it led, even when it confused their audiences. And they both understood something fundamental. Music is about freedom. Sly Stone said it explicitly. Jimi's version of the Star-Spangled Banner said it implicitly. Freedom from musical boundaries. Freedom from racial categories. Freedom to be exactly who you are. That's the legacy. Not just the specific songs or techniques, but the attitude, the fearlessness, the refusal to be limited by anyone else's expectations. Every musician who came after, Prince, Lenny Kravitz, D'Angelo, Anderson .Paak, inherited that freedom. The permission to be funky and experimental, black and rock, traditional and revolutionary. Sly Stone and Jimi Hendrix made that possible. Woodstock 1969 was the moment when their paths crossed most visibly. Two black revolutionaries. Same weekend, same stage, different time slots. Sly playing to 400,000 at 3:30 a.m. Sunday, taking them higher. Jimi playing to 80,000 at 9 a.m. Monday, deconstructing the national anthem. Both performances became legendary. Both are in the Woodstock movie. Both define what that festival meant. Integration, experimentation, freedom, revolution, funk meets psychedelic, groove meets chaos, soul meets acid. Sly Stone and Jimi Hendrix. Two sides of the same coin. Two paths to the same destination. They changed music. They changed culture. They showed us what was possible. And even though both stories ended tragically, Jimi dead at 27, Sly lost to drugs and instability, the music survives. The influence remains. The legacy is eternal. Funk meets psychedelic. Forever.